Now we should be live. Let me check. Okay, so let's start. Welcome everyone to another live session of Farda. This time, the topic that we bring to you is about the status of the rule of law in the subcontinent and what the future holds for us. We are very excited about discussing this topic as we once again go beyond the boundaries of Pakistan to discuss a common issue related to common people and more special because this time we go to the subcontinent. If we look at the current ranking of the rule of law, we see that out of 142 countries, India stands at 79, not too bad. Bangladesh at 127 and Pakistan at 130. If we further look at how this ranking comes together, we see the factors like constraints to government powers, civil justice, fundamental rights, corruption, and whatnot. And we are not doing good in all these aspects. The more worrying thing is that there is a continuous decline in these aspects over the last 5 to 8 years. So we want to understand why is the situation the way it is, how did we get here, and do we have good hopes for the future. To discuss this topic, it is our honor to have Professor Ashok Swain with us. Professor Swain is the Professor of Peace and Conflict Research at Uppsala University in Sweden and has extensive experience consulting on related topics for UN, EU, NATO, Arab League. Professor Swan has also published his research extensively on these topics and writes on such topics regularly on leading news platforms like Gulf News. Before I give the word to Professor Swan, I would like to give a disclaimer to our audience that no matter how much we deny, but people in the subcontinent, especially India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, have a shared history. And if there are issues like the rule of law, which are connected to our history, we need to look at them as a common issue. So there may be some specific references to a country and incidents in our discussion today, but our intention is to not make this as an India versus Pakistan issue or religion versus liberal value issues. We rather want to look at it as a common issue impacting the future of common people. With this, I would like to request Professor Swain to please share your opinion with us.
Thank you, Asim. Thank you, Salman, for having me. It's a pleasure speaking to your platform. I would like. I would just want to mention that my throat is not in the proper shape. So if you don't hear me properly, I'm sorry about that. But I think it's a very important topic which you have brought up: the rule of law. The rule of law. You gave the rankings. But the rule of law is also very much closely related the democratic character of a society or a country. If a country is not democratic, the rule of law will not work, or the rule of law is unthinkable of applications because there will be differences of the law for the different people. The world is going through a crisis on democracy for a long time now, almost nearly 2 decades. There have been democratic decline in almost all over the world. Country like United States, which we all thought that the harbinger or at least at the forefront of democratic group fight, there also democracy has declined quite substantially. But even in Africa, the coups have become so common that it just reminds us that the Cold War period. You are young, but in my life, I've seen the Cold War, how that was really going on. Now, when the military coup is taking place, even people are coming to the street to celebrate it, and that somehow it must be. And those military coup leaders are behaving like they are the political leaders in Africa, or particularly in the Sahel region of Africa. Coming back to our region, the South Asia or Indian subcontinent, particularly, though it has been 2 decades, the democracies have been declining in all over the world. gradually. But the South Asia history is quite, or South Asia story is a bit new. Almost 10 years back, there was a lot of hope on South Asian democracy. Uh, Coming like in Pakistan, for the first time, there is a peaceful transfer of power after election took place in 2013. Um, in 2014, for the first time in India, after several decades, a government came to power with an proper majority. Of course, the people, those who know India, or particularly those who know Modi, might have a problem or might knew that what is coming. But of course, it looks very good in a democratic uh, mapping, because the election took place quite well, and the party come back to power, change after 10 years, replace the party in power and came back to power. In Bangladesh, similarly, to, there is another election, and of course, the first election, 2006 election, was okay, kind of way it's supposed to be. But then also there was a new election, and then the Bangladesh Hasina came to power again. Similarly, around this region, Nepal also saw a new constitution around that time. Maoists, those who have been fighting a struggle in the country, they were also accommodated in the constitution. Nepal became a secular country. Uh, Sri Lanka also emerged from a decades long of civil war, mm, coming back to again, in some kind of peaceful democratic election period. So I think with all these things, which when you look at it 10, 12 years back, the history of our hope of the democracy, of particularly in that region, was very much look bright, you may say so. But that has changed. That has changed dramatically in recent years. Uh, the the position of United States in global democratic sphere is to some extent also, we need to know that India has been a democratic country. Of course, it's not a perfect democracy, neither United States, but it has been a democratic country since its independence. Big, a little bit up and down, but it has remained one of the only country, or one of the very few countries in the post-colonial states keeping that kind of democratic structure or peaceful change of power. But that states, I mean, both the two big ones, VDEM, Varieties of Democracy, and Freedom House, they downgraded Indians' democracy in the 2021. They are not called anymore, India is not called anymore a democracy to them, by them, the Jew. Pakistan, of course, there has been a lot of euphoria after the victory of Taliban in Afghanistan. But things have changed quite a big way in the character of the hope the world had on a gradual democratization of Pakistan and the withdrawal of military from the democratic sphere. You can't have a military and democracy at the same time. Those playing at the military playing the main role in a democratic setup. That doesn't happen. That never has happened. Never happened. In Bangladesh, the country which was considered a success or economic miracle in the South Asia, which was when it got its independence, it was called a basket case in 1971. But it did well in economically well. It was doing well to some extent after a period of anti-minority politics in that country. But what has happened in the last several years? The Hasina government has changed the character of democracy in that country. It is going to election. It used to be, I used to do my postdoctoral research in the early 90s in Bangladesh. I've seen Bangladesh very closely, how fragile the country's democracy is. The election has been declared in the January quite unilaterally by the Hasina government. The opposition is doing protest. They're protesting for a caretaker government to take an election to take place. Pakistan has a caretaker government now, but then Bangladesh, that is the demand. That's why today now the hartal is going on. There have been a number of arrests. 10,000 people have been arrested. Opposition activists have been arrested in Bangladesh You can't have a democracy putting people in jail, your opposition activists. This is why the situation is in South Asia. Of course, in Sri Lanka, Nepal, Nepal is doing well on that front, except only country has I have some hope about at least going on. So it's Sri Lanka. We were seeing that. We saw this dramatic footage of Sri Lankan democracy or Sri Lankan economic crisis. Rajapaksa family leaving and coming back again. The election will take place next year. Sri Lanka again is back to the same, which had brought a lot of hope last year that at least the people have woken up, but then it's just suppressed. Things are back to normal again. I think what's happening, why we are, of course, in the globally, this is going, but South Asia is a part of global world, though you call it Indian subcontinent or South Asia. The world is very globalized. Similarly, the democratized process or whatever is happening is also part of that kind of globalized malaise come in. One thing which I want to mention, that the populism is a very common factor which has really affecting the South Asia quite a big way. There have been some leaders, those who have come up in these regions. They think that they are not the political leaders. They are beyond everything. They are the messiahs, those who have been sent by, depending on which god is powerful in that country, to make everything good. They have all the power. They can do anything. They have taken the discourse, the basic civilized discourse of those countries to dogs. There is nothing called anymore democratic. You see, the societies have their own internal ethnic, religious cleavages. It's the role of the political leaders to maintain the decorum, create a political discourse where the people will act in a way that is supposed to be acted. We are not in the medieval era. It's a 21st century, for heaven's sake. But the thing is, Indian Prime Minister is telling the voters that vote for my party, that will hang the opposition party. The hanging is a kind of thing which should not be a political discourse in the 21st century. How this is happening? Because these leaders, we also see in Europe, as you can see, Salman or Asim, that what is happening in Europe, this has happening for a long time. These kind of right-wing populist leaders, they are treated in a very different way than our regular run-of-mill political leaders in anywhere in the world. They can do anything. They can kill a person. They can be corrupt like hell. They can do all sorts of socially unacceptable things, but they are beyond everything. And that's why they don't really, this is some things why, of course we can say these are their personal issues, but these are also personal issues for other political leaders. Why those political issues or personal issues become the political issues, but not for these the populist ones. And once they do it, the corruption, because corruption has been a main issue of change of government in that part of the world. Whenever the political parties were coming to power, political leaders were accused of corruption. We have seen in Pakistan, we have seen in Bangladesh, we see it in India, also see in Sri Lanka. Corruption becomes a political issue, an election issue all the time. And that has been also a part of the way oppositions to come back to come back to power. But that's not happening anymore. The corruption is only being used against the opposition, not against the government. The government, if they're populist or in power, they are beyond that kind of corruption parameters. In India, the Indian Prime Minister has sold almost all Indians' properties to one single businessman. Nobody questions it. Though the world questions it, no one questions it in India. Why that happens? Because that the populism have come in. Then another thing which we also see, which is rising very fast, that economic inequality in our region. Poverty, economic inequality. Those countries, those who are doing little bit well in the economic, the larger economic parameters, or the trying to see IMF, what you call it, the growth, but they are the kind of distribution or redistribution of wealth has not been taking place. We see a lots of poor people in our country. Poor poverty is increasing in our region rather than decreasing. When you are poor, there is a huge inequality between the two groups or the two types of people. You don't expect to be treated equally in a rule of law. You need to have a certain kind of, the system will be really not in a sense will able to come to when there is a large number of people have not really been into the economic equality system. We do have our strong cultural and social cleavages in those areas. We are hugely segmented countries, segmented societies. And then when you have an economy brought in, economic inequality you bring in, we are in a very difficult situation. You don't expect the people, those who are socially, economically underprivileged, socially, culturally, religiously underprivileged, and then you have added to the economic problem, you don't expect them to really get the similar type of equal treatment in the society by any system. And that's what is happening. That also has created a huge number of powerful elites. They are become extremely strong in the politics, in economics, in the bureaucracy. And that is really is the, when equality is going away, then you are having a problem. And that is also affecting the civil liberties and human rights issues. What are the civil liberties we have? Any government can put anybody in the jail. That doesn't work in a civilized society. Forget about a democracy. You are putting people in jails for months and years, and the court is not able to do anything. Why the court is not able to do anything? Because there is a weak judicial system. We see all these things, sometimes the judiciary in Pakistan standing up to the leader, or in India, the Indian Chief Justice making some kind of statement which sounds very nice. But when you look at the regular rulings, judicial system is weak. Judicial system is infected with the social economic inequality, and judicial system doesn't have the power even to implement it. Judicial system doesn't have the power to implement these things. It's the state. And then when the populists come in, they don't care about the judicial, because they don't have the same, because they don't feel shameless of not listening to the judiciary. So judiciary, they know that they can talk, but it's not going to be implemented. To give you an example, I mean, the Indian capital and also part of Pakistan, the pollution is taking place. Diwali, Indian Supreme Court made a judgment saying that fireworks will be banned in India. The populist Hindu right-wing leaders came out openly going against it, and pollution has reached in Delhi. I call it, if the similar pollution, half of that similar pollution take place in Beijing, it becomes a big issue. But the international media doesn't look at the Delhi population in that way, because I call it a so-called democratic pollution, or their own allies pollution. So this is where I think we need to look at it, what is happening. So there is a weak judicial system. The inequality has brought in also lack of legal awareness, lack of education to demand whatever we have. Even if whatever you have, I'm not going back to my own story. I'm also fighting with the legal system in India to get back my citizenship, which has been taken by the government without any reason, not giving any reason. I haven't been able to travel to India for 4 years. What I have done? If I have done anything, bring them to the court. You can't just say that, you can just stop me. Why this is? Because if they can do it to me, imagine what they're doing. I am a Hindu upper caste person. At least I have the money, I have the support to file the case. I do have a job abroad. I do have a voice, which they cannot stop. But still they do it to me. Imagine if you are a minority, poor. You don't have the education, you don't have the money. You are in the social, cultural, economic system at the down, at the bottom. How you confront this? Where the judiciary comes? Judiciary doesn't come to help me either. So this is where we need to realize that some things we are getting into a situation where we have got into a loop that it's very difficult to come out. Of course, I will be trying to hopeful when you come back in the question answer session, but I really, it's a very depressing situation. The other, before I think I'm running out of my time, the one thing also we need to know, the external actors. This is a big thing in Pakistan. This is also a big thing in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. Bangladesh election is going. You can see that the Bangladeshi Prime Minister's son yesterday was giving a statement openly accusing foreign embassies, particularly focusing on the United States, that they are interfering. They are the one because of this disturbance taking place, pre-election violence taking place. They are threatening directly the American ambassador in Bangladesh. And you know very well what is happening in Pakistan when the change of the government took place. How those interference has taken place. In Sri Lanka, it's China versus India story all the time. In Nepal, China versus India. Who has the importance? In Maldives, which has just taken place election, just president came to power only day before. He came to power on Friday. Saturday, he asked that the Indian troops have to leave. It's just whether the one regime coming to pro-India, another regime coming to pro-China. That's where we are. We as a country, we as a region, is extremely resourceful. We are not small banana republics that we should be pushed like the countries or the big powers that we will do our. We have gone through it. We have suffered hundreds of years under colonial rule. Why our leaders, why our people don't realize that this is the time they should decide rather than somebody in Washington or somebody in Beijing or somebody in Kremlin deciding for us? If London cannot decide anything, we are now deciding for London, but that's a different thing. But these people are not able to do it. So I think it's a scenario we are in. It doesn't really is neither good for democracy nor rule of law. It's declining day by day. When we as the region got out of the colonial rule, a lot of hope had that this region has a huge potential. The people are extremely resourceful, knowledgeable, education is there. There's so much human capital in that region, but we have messed up. Unless we accept that we have messed up, we will not come out of it. And that's what I think. Unless this is something, I will stop here, saying that unfortunately at present the rule of law is as at the bottom as the democracy is in that region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ashok. I will start with my question, and it's very insightful that you have mentioned both democracy and the kind of imbalanced distribution of wealth in the region based on caste or whatnot kind of environments that we have. But Ashok, we have good education institutions in the region. For example, especially if we take the example from India, IIT, Tata Institutes, and big names that even have shown that the kind of education that they are giving is very well received at the international level. Look at the CEOs and all these. Still, it is very difficult to understand that while giving the good education to our youngsters, and it's not that different in Pakistan, like more than 65% of the population is young, going to schools, at least the ones that are in the city, but still this whole idea of going beyond the limits, going beyond the the kind of lines that drawn by the governments, it is difficult to really see like why education is also not helping us getting things in order. So if you can say a few words about like what kind of education system we should reform in our regions that can help us addressing these kind of real challenges.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, but I think this is, we all have been educated in our countries, and we are abroad now. Of course, we can see there is the basic education has been quite good. There is no doubt about that. I even studied in a village school which didn't have a roof for many years, but still I, got basic education without paying a single penny. I went through the PhDs to studies also in India. That was possible. And then if you can do it, that's any country can provide that. That is extremely good. What has happened? Our education system, which is rather moving from, there are two things which I think things happened. There has been more privatized institutes have come in. Privatization has taken place. The privatization makes it more kind of economic equality. If you have economic equality, then it helps. Otherwise, it just creates again, ferments the same economic inequality problem, because a person like who I grew up in a very small village, who had the similar facility like the people, my friends who grew up in the urban centers, we are going to similar type of school system. But now it doesn't really work that way. So the privatized schools bringing in the different type of education system, making them helpful to go to the other type of system, which was not there. But I think the whole education system in South Asia is very much of obeying education system. We don't ask questions. Even if the education system was quite good, we have not learned how to question our superiors. Unless you ask the question, you don't get the answer. I was once giving a nowadays, I will come back, but I think, once I was talking to some of the Indian academics, why neutrality, why on the academic part in the India, and as well as how the student remain neutral. One of the questions I think it was that the Indian academics or Indian professors don't want to be evaluated by students. Why you will not be evaluated by students? What kind of status you want to keep? That you if you are doing a profession, what is the problem to win? I mean, it might come bad. That's okay. We all get sometime bad evaluation. But why you should not? Why you should be just fearful of any evaluation, or because you have power, just stop this evaluation? Why? I think this is the general mentality that we don't ask questions. You won't believe that the leadership, how the academic leadership, they are directly appointed by the government. You see the vice chancellors are, they are not selected like here in Europe or many parts you will see in North America. They are not selected by academics. They are selected by the party in power. They have to keep party in power and happy. So here we do have, I mean, here the vice chancellor can question the state. Can they question the state in India? Can they question the state in Pakistan? Can they question the state in Bangladesh? They will not. Their job will not be there. That's probably the easy. That's the only thing. If the best possible thing they can do is not, they might be in jail. So we need to ask this: that can we question? Do we give a space for the activism? Can our students and academics actively participate in academic or even the political activities? They are not possible. Of course, this is some kind of strain is coming because of Israel-Palestine story in this part of the world. But that's not, at least hopefully not in Sweden, only at one place. But then coming up in the US quite a big way. But I think it's important that academic freedom is extremely critical for anything academics will do really well and contribute to the society. And that's not given in India, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh. So just to give you are telling about this kind of big academic institutes in India producing great people. How much we have really invented things? We are good servants. We have been working for others, isn't it? We have been good managers, but we have not been the good inventors. Why so? Because we don't know how to ask questions. We don't know to go against the system. We don't know to break the kind of things which has been going on forever. We know how to swim with the system. Just to give you an example, again, an anecdote. The kind of education system, you mentioned few in India. You probably know the IIT Delhi, which is supposed to be one of the good institutions. Last year, I was invited to give a talk to their annual student cultural thing. I don't know, students invited me. So I was very surprised that they asked me to talk to them. I mean, because my kind of character, I didn't expect to get that invitation. But then that created a big story in India. Even the ministerial level was pressure and the whole program was cancelled because the students refused to invite me. So in that way, you think an education system will work, will produce the mind which we want to? That's what we have become a better, another form of servant. Many people are migrating, dying to migrate to other countries, trying to find a career and to serve the other countries rather than our country, because we don't have an academic freedom there.
Thank you. So Ashok, my next question is about ground realities in terms of like what is difficult to change. For example, it's a region with a massive population that brings quite a lot of insecurity. No matter what even governments and institutions would like to deal with, it's still very difficult in reality to really handle either 1.5 billion or even countries like Pakistan where you have 250 million people. So how should we approach again while having being these insecurities inherently built because of the broken structure and still somehow trying to bring some kind of peace in the society where the people can feel that they have some voice that can be heard and they can live a normal life?
Thank you. It's a very important question, to be honest. Of course, the population number has increased in the region quite dramatically. It has more than doubled in my lifetime. So things are different than what it used to be. But that doesn't mean that because if you are a population, because we usually, I work a lot on the environment issue, climate issue. Usually the population is the easy way out, that everybody say, oh, because of large population number, this is what happening. So it's a easy way of putting the blame on the population. But I think we need to see how that population can act as a benefit to the society rather than creating the issues which you talk about. You just told that this kind of insecurity it will bring. Of course, there is the youth bulge it will happen if there is no jobs available. They don't able to really get the basic survival structure in place. There is also poor people don't really, one thing which you probably know, that the poor people don't rebel. Only when they rebel, when the poor people think that they are not treated fairly. Means there is always this relative deprivation, which a theory in our things that I know Salman and I, we went to the same school, we come from the similar background, we studied the same school, same way, but why Salman could do better and I couldn't do? That's the time when it comes. But if I have Salman and I are same way, struggling to survive, going to the plant agriculture, making it life made just somehow, that's okay. We don't really think of that way, that we will rebel. So the rebel is somehow when there is economic inequality become much more problematic. The other thing which is happening in our society is that you see the people, those who are really underprivileged, they are. I wrote some time back about India. When I was allowed to write on the Indian newspapers on the situation of Muslims. Why Indian Muslims still, there are 200 million. You said 250 million. India used to have even more Muslims than Pakistan. Now Pakistan has gone beyond. But I think how Indian Muslims have been living peacefully in India for so many years, despite whatever. I mean, I know some of people in my Twitter accounts that Jinnah was right all the time, but then India, we used to keep these 200 million Muslims peacefully and still continues to do so for many years now. The reason, I mean, I'm not sure what will happen in future. What I said that time, that I said, look, Indian Muslims have been economically oppressed, or economically not equally same way have been progressed like Hindus have done, or upper caste Hindus have done. They're similarly like Dalits or the tribals, similar way. Their employment in the different bureaucratic and military and security sector have been dismal. Their economic upliftment or getting the loans and all these things have been quite bad. Their representation in the political, particularly in the judiciary and others, not very good. How on earth they have been really surviving this kind of inequality for so long? What was the reason? Because the reason was, or at least my argument was, that there was hope in the political system, that they can be a factor in changing politics that will be able to help them in, even not now, but that will be in the future. So they had a voice in the political system. The problem is when the majoritarianism comes in and becomes the part and parcel of democratic structure, when the right-wing populism takes the role, that voice in a democracy goes away. They don't have any hope. And when you lose hope and you see others are relatively, you are on the, compared to others, you are relatively deprived, then you see there will be, I'm not sure how many, because once I said that Indian Muslims need a movement like Black Lives Matter, that became a big issue in India. So, but that's what will come. So it is very important to realize that you must have a certain kind of poverty alleviation program, which China had done tremendously well with the economic growth, which we have felt, or I'm talking we means in India, but also South Asian continent has felt quite badly. Then we have a certain kind of politics, which is hopefully democratically, that these people, even if they are not really doing that well, but there is some hope left that they can actually, act in the system, which will be somehow protect their interest. That if that goes away, then we are in trouble. So this is you bring both them to do the poverty alleviation, create an economic structure where they will have also possibilities to engage in a fairly, and also a political system where they have a voice. Then I don't think that will be a problem. And they will not only be a problem, they will be an asset They are going to be an asset to this with this kind of human capital we have in that region.
Professor, you have mentioned quite a few important points. For example, populism, activism. So I would like to come to that, but I strongly also believe in like human evolution and the environment that we have been in. So I would like to take a step back and then try to understand where this problem originated. So, for example, the colonization. So colonization was not a, let's say, like insignificant or a small event in our history. So, and at that time, of course, if we were living in colonized environment, then people maybe tend to become rebellious because anything was imposed on them by the colonizers. They perceive that this is unfairly, done. So from common people point of view, so maybe even today, the way we have evolved or came out of colonization is that we do not like to follow the laws, and then we try to be rebellious against, and we challenge the rate of the government. On the other hand, our governments have also been part of this colonization, so maybe they also try to have their characters as the colonizers. So they try to exercise their power unfairly on people, the same way as the colonizers have done in the past to control the people. So do you think that could this be the reason, or is there a way to come out of this finally after after a century?
The first part is a good part. The second part is a bad part. Why I say so? The reason is because the first part, I remember some years back, I was speaking to a famous Norwegian professor who has been working on the development issue in Sweden. So we are having a discussion, and he said, Ashok, can you tell me why in Sweden people do accept whatever the government say, but in Norway we rebel all the time? Salman, you might have known, and Asim, you might have also, because here we have lost the question. We don't question the state. I mean, imagine a country change the 200 years of policy, join NATO. Did you see any kind of things happening on the street? Nothing. I mean, this country has, I shouldn't say, and I have nowhere to go, so I should be quite careful what I'm saying about Sweden. But there is nothing happening on that front. Why Norway? Norway doesn't accept it. Norway stand up. Norway asks questions. The reason is because Norway was under Swedish rule till 1905, only 115 years old, 118 years old democracy, or under democratic self-determination. So they have not been used to take everything. Of course, I'm not saying Swedish state is a bad state. Swedish state is probably one of the good states you can find. But the Swedish state, it doesn't mean that we should not question the state. Once we lose our habit of questioning the state, that becomes a real problem in a democracy. So here, the similar type of thing, that because state has been doing quite well in the at least last 100 years or 200, 150 years, the Swedish economy, they have really made significant progress. The country works well in many ways. I don't have to worry about my electricity, my water, my roads, or salary. It even comes to my account before 5 days before the month ends. So those things happens. We don't think about those things, but we don't question the state. Whereas the Norway, which became a newly independent state, 118 years, but still it has kept, and that's what has happened in our states, in our part of the world, because of our history. We have been different ways governed, and they have not been really representative of our country and society. Then we have learned how to question. And that's a good thing. That's good for a democracy. As I keep on saying, everybody should be questioned. And that's what we have learned to question. The problem, which I say, the state, instead of becoming the regime which we inherited or came after colonials went out, rather than learning to be representative of us, They are learning, they exactly become rent-seeking states like colonial states. And that's where the problem lies. They didn't change, but we changed. Or there are some attempt to change it because, I won't saying that, look, this is always a time that we all go ups and downs. This democratic structures in different parts of the world also goes ups and downs. We have seen in Europe. I mean, Europe, we might be saying you look at Germany, what it was just only less than 100 years back. What kind of democracy it was. So I think we all go through ups and downs. All the whatever anyone claims. But this is very important that we have that the people at least to question. My problem is when the people have lost their voice or they're not questioning. It's better to have a disordered democracy. It's better to have a democracy which is always going on some kind of distraction, some kind of movement, some kind of protest, rather than having a very authoritarian, autocratic state which tells us what to do. Then we don't have a voice. And this is where I think the populism is a bigger challenge which has come to our region. Populism, authoritarianism, which is actually when we have a certain period of democratic time, then our protest, we have been doing well. 2010, I wrote a book, How to Do Good Protest, Successful Protest in India. If that book would have come after 10 years, they wouldn't have taken that long to ban me to go to India. I would have been banned even before. So it's a somehow there was a time when some kind of democratic structure there, which is deserted. That's fine. You should do this. But I think we should be really worried about that. It's not to break that cycle, to make our regimes forget that colonial mindset, and also not move out of this kind of populist right wing or whatever it's called, what populist right wing, left wing is, whatever it is. Whenever it comes, it becomes quite difficult to be or quite. You cannot. They will never accept your question. The system will not take your question, and that's the problem.
Okay, so connected to this point, populism, as we see in the world, not only subcontinent, for example, maybe the people who are listening to me may not like my question, but the likes of Imran Khan and Modi and Trump, overall. So what is that which gives rise to populism? And because, you also mentioned that we should have also freedom for activism, but the problem is that, especially recently we have seen in Pakistan, that because of this populist or populist politics, common people, get carried away so much that they take the activism in the wrong way, and then it turns into riots almost, and then they do not consider about the impact on the society, government, and whatnot. So then there is no clear understanding that why, how we should take the activism as, and if we are taking activism because of following someone, then question that someone is leading us to the right path, and we are always looking for messiah. So why is this the problem in our region?
Because we have been yes, just to one thing, because I remembered when the Imran Khan was being shown the door. I was critical of the way it was being shown the door. So I got a lot of criticism. Hey, you criticize Modi, why you support Imran Khan? I said, I don't support Imran Khan. I don't support anyone for that matter. Why I supported that, or why it seems to be supporting that, I really think the military should be staying out of it. If it would have been a genuine political movement, genuine political issue, political parties coming together, asking them without the guidance of the military, then it was absolutely fantastic. And I think we should be leaving that politics to the political parties, and the militaries should not be involved. And that's what I say for everyone. Despite my total dislike the way Modi does the politics, I don't want, or I will not never prefer any kind of military challenge to his. He should be removed by the democratic means. And this is because that's what we need to realize. This is the issue. Why these things? What you said, that we have to look at the people. These are the people, those who have voted for these people, isn't it? And we have a tendency that don't question the intelligence of voters. It sounds elitist to us. When we question that, how can you elect these people? When I ask this question, how can you elect a person in India who has lied all through his life, who lied about his marriage, who lied about his education, who lied about his profession? If whatever he has not lied, he continues to lie. And then how do you vote for him? And who is supposed to be blamed? He's a habitual liar. But then people, those who are accepting that lie, they should be looked at it, isn't it? But I think we are in a. I think that's the problem goes into our civil society, which we think that we have a very vibrant civil society in our region, which I thought also, to be honest, I thought India at least has a very vibrant civil society. And I worked quite a lot in Bangladesh. I thought also they have. The problem is our civil societies, I'm very sorry to say, they lack spine because they have been working with the state all the time. They are state embedded civil society rather than the civil society who is standing up for the value and the morals and the larger national interest. And that's what if you have a strong civil society which is really look at it and try to protect it, the kind of core values of the state, the core values of our nation, then I don't think these are the regimes, these populists will ever able to get that kind of possibility. Because the populists have got a very, we always tend to blame the opposition. But once a populist comes in, or the one breaks the whole established democratic discourse, it's very difficult for the established centrist parties or the regular political parties to break their past and join the chorus. It won't happen. It will take time. They will try to learn how to do it after some time, but it's a very, very difficult to be a populist overnight. You can't be, because you have a baggage already and historical baggage. So I think it's a people, those who have to. It's not only people, it's also there is a lot of civil society, academics have a lot of role to play. Just to give you a very quick example, in 2011, India witnessed a massive popular movement against corruption. Isn't it? 2011, if you remember, there was and that brought down the Manmohan Singh government quite decisively after that. The people, those who are supposed to, who will communicate this, that what we are getting into? Who are the people who are doing this movement? What is the alternative available? Who will tell that? This will be told by the civil society leaders. This will be told by the academics. This will be told by the press, isn't it? That's what you expect in a society, that, hey, guys, you do this. These are the movement in the name of something, and the alternative is some things which you will get, which will be much more problematic. On the kind of, you won't believe that many of the academics of repute, whom I consider they're smart, Indian origin, living abroad and in India, political scientists, they know Modi well more than anyone else, but they try to justify Modi or legitimize Modi before 2014. Now you have changed the voice. How does that matter? You legitimized somebody who has such a dark past and who has been always like this. So this is where I think we blame the voters, but the voters also need to be, they are not being served rightly by the kind of people, those who are supposed to be filtering and supposed to be telling the thing to the voters. because we have messed up in our civil society academic structure.
Okay. Salman, I think we have only 5 minutes, so maybe if you can take one question from audience. There are already questions, and then we can.
Yes, I can. So, Ashok, we have one question from Zaki Khan, and he's asking about, like, okay, in reality, when it comes to the big powers like US, is it really possible to to have an independent kind of setup without involving any Western powers, in especially when it comes to the subcontinent region? And we have quite a lot of history of politicians that have strange background.
That's the problem. It's not the big powers are the problem. That's our. I think. क्या बोलते हैं घर का खोटा ना क्यों? There is some kind of way.
घर का भेदी language है.
Yeah, that's yeah. So,
Something like
so
that.
we have problems at home. Don't blame these guys. I think the external guys. Yes, United States. This is the same thing in Africa. I have been discussing, and I always being sometimes the Western scholars criticize me, because I thought is the best thing Africa can get is the China into Africa, because Africa used to be manipulated, used by all sorts of way by the West. They were those who were running the Africa. Why? Because they are the only source where they could control the finance, and they control the legitimacy of the rulers. Look at what is happening in Sahel region. If you look at one country by another country, Sahel, Gabon, Niger, you'll name it. What is happening in the whole region? It's France has been running these countries, even sitting in Paris. Why this now coming up? Because of course, the China and Russia are becoming a kind of major actors there. This is always depends on how the leadership acts. Because the leadership have the possibility now to use one against another to get a better deal for your country. If you are only waiting for a better deal for yourself, of course you are not going to bargain that. Can you? Then you will go for somebody who will give you a better deal, not for your country. And I think that is the problem. The problem is not America, because if there is America is a problem, there is all the alternatives are there for this country, isn't it? Why you don't go there? Why you don't play against each other? They have played sometimes. They're not new to this game. They have been doing it for some time. They're not like Africa. They have been, South Asians have been quite good at playing this game for some time. Why not playing now? And playing well, because you are looking at your own self-interest. You know Pakistan politics well. I wrote one of the very thing that when there was something, if you remember, several years back when Modi came to power, called the Modi Doctrine. Nobody talks about this Modi Doctrine anymore. I wrote a piece in the Indian Outlook saying that it's not Modi Doctrine, it's called Me Doctrine. It's everything about him. So if you have everything about him, you aren't going to bargain with Biden or Putin or Xi about India's interest. You will only bargain about your own interest. And that's where the problem is. It's not the problem with I don't blame Americans. I don't blame Xi. It's the problem with our leaders.
Thank you very much, Ashok. There is one more question, but I think now we are very close to the 300 hours here. But is it okay if I can ask one more, or maybe
one more is fine? Okay, go ahead. Yeah. That's fine.
So that question is from Arvid Afi, and he's wondering about, like, when it comes to the let me have a look on the question. Yeah. So
they're not watching. They're not watching World Cup final. At least I can answer that question.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, but his question is more about, like, okay, when it comes to the rule of law, you have put the democracy as a front runner together with that. But then in your example, we have seen that you gave an example of China, how they have handled the case of pollution. But then he's asking, like, isn't it really contradictory, because China is never been a kind of country where the democracy have been the front runner. So how we can relate to that?
No, I think democracy, democracy is the best system we have. Put it very clearly. I remember there was I was giving a lecture in SLU, the Swedish University of Agricultural Science. You both know Salman and Awasim. You know, I usually go to give this lecture, and I was giving that how I was comparing India and China, and how China has been successful in eradicating poverty, controlling pollution, doing very well in the at least controlling environment and climate change, carbon emissions within the country. So those kind of things I was giving. Then once, of course, there is a big anti-China environment in the West. So it really irritated some of my European students, because I was trying to, they thought I'm probably a Chinese agent or an anti-democrat. So then, but it is before Modi came in. Just make it very clarified. When I had this hope about the South Asian democracy. So the question was to me from the class, somebody stood up and said that if you are praising China doing these things, if you are given a chance to live in India and China, where you will live? I said, I will live in India anytime, not in China, because there I do have a voice. I think I can make a change. I won't say that now. Of course, I mean, even if I want to leave, the Modi doesn't allow me to leave. But that's another thing. But that time, at least, I was always, despite the fact that I appreciate what China has done in these issues, I think it is extremely important if a functioning democracy at any time, much better than any fantastic autocracy, military bureaucracy, whatever you bring in. So we need a working democracy. Once it does, I don't think that's any way any system can really. It might be a bit delayed, it might be late, but imagine 2005 to 2012, when Indian democracy was considered one of the worst phase in the outside, because it's a lot of coalition politics, a lot of argument, a lot of discussion. There was a lack of any. Manmohan Singh was only kind of when you see him, at least you feel nice, and also feel pity for him, because poor guy is in the position. But imagine that is the time Indian economic growth was better than China. So it's not that the problem with the Indian any democracy is, the problem is how we manage ourselves. If a good democracy, I will be always good for it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ashok, for sharing your thoughts with us. We are really thankful to you. And yeah, with that, we close the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.